In Lagos, billionaire Chief Ajayi tests his maid Amara with his credit card, and she passes with honesty. Other women fail his tests, but Amara's loyalty wins his heart. If you enjoy African folk stories filled with love, subscribe, like, and comment where you are watching from, and join with us as the story begins. Lagos did not sleep, it only pretended to rest. Before dawn, the city was already breathing, engines coughing awake, streetlights flickering like tired eyes, and hawkers whispering prayers as they prepared to face another day. The air carried the smell of fuel, roasted corn, and ambition mixed together. In this city, everyone wanted something, and everyone was afraid of becoming nothing. Tall glass buildings rose proudly above crowded streets, mocking the barefoot children below. Here, wealth and poverty shook hands every morning and pretended not to notice each other. People said Lagos could break a weak soul or crown a strong one king. But nobody talked about how it quietly tested the human heart. High above the noise, in a mansion perched in Ikoyi, lived Chief Adebayo Ajayi. His house stood like a fortress of success, guarded by iron gates and silent security men. From his balcony, he watched the city stretch and yawn beneath him. Thousands of people rushed to jobs they hated, chasing salaries that barely lasted the month. Chief Ajayi owned banks, estates, shipping companies, and oil contracts. Yet every morning, he woke with a heaviness money could not lift. His wealth bought him everything except peace. And the louder the city grew, the quieter his heart became. Inside the mansion, marble floors reflected chandeliers worth millions. But those lights never warmed the rooms the way laughter once did. Chief Ajayi had loved before, deeply and foolishly. Each time, his love had been measured in naira, not loyalty. Women praised his smile while calculating his net worth. They held his hand but watched his credit card more closely. When the money stopped flowing freely, affection disappeared like power during rainfall. What remained was betrayal, public embarrassment, and a man who stopped believing in sincerity. That morning, Chief Ajayi sat alone at his dining table. A full Nigerian breakfast lay untouched before him: yam, eggs, tea, and fruit. He stared at his reflection in a silver spoon. A rich man's face stared back, but the eyes were tired and guarded. His late mother's voice echoed softly in his memory. True character, she always said, reveals itself when temptation knocks. He placed the spoon down gently, as if afraid to make noise. In that quiet moment, a dangerous idea formed in his mind. Somewhere within the same mansion, on the ground floor, Amara Okonkwo began her day. She was the maid, young, humble, and invisible to most people who passed her by. She cleaned rooms she would never own and touched luxuries she could never afford. Yet her heart carried a dignity no uniform could hide. Amara moved softly, greeting the morning with a silent prayer. She did not know that Lagos was about to test her in ways she never imagined. Above her, a billionaire planned an experiment with love and trust. Below him, a maid unknowingly stood at the center of destiny. And in Lagos, the city that never shows mercy, two lives were slowly moving toward collision. Amara Okonkwo's life had taught her how to move quietly through the world. In Lagos, noise attracted trouble, and silence often meant survival. She was 24 years old, yet her eyes carried the wisdom of someone much older. Life had aged her gently but firmly, like the sun aging old buildings without asking permission. Every morning, before the city fully woke up, Amara whispered a short prayer. Not for riches, not for fame, but for strength to endure another day. She believed God listened more closely to whispered prayers. Loud ones, she felt, were often full of pride. Amara came from a small town in Anambra State. Her father died when she was 16, leaving her mother and two younger brothers behind. School ended abruptly for her, not because she lacked intelligence, but because poverty lacked mercy. Dreams were replaced with responsibilities, and books with market baskets. When Lagos called, she answered with fear and hope mixed together. The city promised nothing but possibility, and that was enough. Working in Chief Ajayi's mansion was not her first job. She had been insulted, cheated, and wrongly accused in other homes. Yet here, despite the wealth and distance, she felt something different. The house was cold, but it was not cruel. Amara cleaned with care, not because she was watched, but because it was who she was. She polished glass until it shone like truth and swept floors like she was erasing yesterday's pain. Other staff often mocked her softness. "Lagos will finish you," they said with laughter. But Amara smiled quietly and continued her work. She knew bitterness was heavier than poverty. Sometimes, while dusting the living room, she paused to stare at family portraits. She wondered what it felt like to belong to a home built on love, not transactions. Her heart longed for something she could not name. Not luxury, but safety, dignity, and affection without conditions. Chief Ajayi noticed her long before she noticed him. Not because she was beautiful in a loud way, but because she was different. She never stared at his cars with hunger. She never lingered around his room or laughed unnecessarily at his jokes. When spoken to, she answered respectfully and briefly. When thanked, she bowed her head, uncomfortable with attention. In a world where everyone wanted something from him, Amara wanted nothing. And that unsettled him deeply. He watched her one afternoon through the glass wall of his office. She was arranging flowers with careful hands, humming softly. For a moment, the noise in his head went silent. Then suspicion crept in, because Lagos had taught him never to trust appearances. That night, Chief Ajayi stood in his study holding his black credit card. The card had no spending limit and no mercy. It had destroyed relationships and exposed greed. It had shown him who people truly were when temptation smiled at them. He clenched it tightly, his jaw hardening. "This city has lied to me too many times," he muttered. His plan became clearer with every second. He would test loyalty, not with promises, but with opportunity. And though he did not yet admit it to himself, the first name on his mind was Amara Okonkwo. Downstairs, unaware of the storm forming above her, Amara folded laundry neatly. Her hands were tired, but her heart was calm. She had no idea that the next test would change her life forever. And in Lagos, when destiny comes, it never knocks gently. Morning came with a strange heaviness in the Ajayi mansion. The sky was clear, yet something unseen pressed against the walls of the house. Chief Adebayo Ajayi woke earlier than usual. Sleep had abandoned him, leaving questions and memories behind. He stood before his mirror, adjusting his cufflinks slowly. The reflection staring back at him was that of a powerful man wrestling with doubt. Money had given him control over everything, except people's hearts. And today, he intended to take that control back. At breakfast, he barely touched his food. Instead, his eyes followed Amara as she moved quietly around the dining area. She poured tea carefully, avoiding eye contact out of respect. Her hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from exhaustion. Chief Ajayi noticed the small details. The way she thanked the cook, the way she wiped spills immediately. No greed, no curiosity, no entitlement. Just a woman doing her job with dignity. For a brief moment, guilt tugged at his conscience. But Lagos had taught him that mercy without proof was foolish. After breakfast, he called for her. His voice was calm, measured, unreadable. "Amara," he said, standing by the staircase. "Yes, sir," she replied, stopping immediately. He studied her face closely, not as a man looking at a maid, but as a judge observing a witness. "I will be traveling later today," he said slowly. "There are a few errands I need handled." Amara nodded respectfully, her heart beating faster. Assignments from the boss always carried weight. Chief Ajayi reached into his pocket and brought out the black credit card. The room seemed to fall silent as it caught the light. "This card has no limit," he said. "It can buy anything in Lagos: cars, jewelry, houses." Amara's breath caught briefly, then steadied. She had never held such power in her hands before. "I want you to go to the mall," he continued. "Buy a few household items and groceries." He paused deliberately. "You will keep the card until I return tomorrow." Amara's eyes widened, not with excitement, but fear. Her first instinct was to refuse. "Sir, are you sure?" she asked softly. Her voice carried honesty, not strategy. Chief Ajayi watched her closely. This was the moment he had waited for. "Yes," he replied firmly. "Take it." He placed the card in her palm. It felt heavy, far heavier than plastic should feel. As she closed her fingers around it, Amara's mind raced. She thought of her mother struggling to pay rent. She thought of her brothers wearing worn-out shoes. She thought of hunger, sickness, and debts waiting back home. Temptation whispered gently, like a friend pretending to care. But another voice rose stronger, her father's voice. "Your name is all you truly own," he used to say. "Guard it with your life." Amara swallowed hard. "Yes, sir," she said simply. At the mall, Lagos displayed its seduction proudly. Luxury stores glowed, calling out to every weakness. Sales attendants smiled wider when they saw the black card. Their respect shifted instantly, from her uniform to her potential. She felt uncomfortable under their sudden kindness. This was not how dignity should feel. Amara bought exactly what she was told to buy. Nothing more, nothing less. When a salesgirl whispered, "Madam, you can afford anything here." Amara shook her head gently and paid for her items. Back at the mansion, she locked the card inside a drawer. Then she knelt by her bed and prayed. "God," she whispered with tears in her eyes, "do not let money change who I am." Upstairs, Chief Ajayi watched the security footage silently. Every move, every decision, every pause. And as hours passed without abuse or excess, something inside him began to crack. Still, he reminded himself, the real test was not over yet. Night fell slowly over Lagos, wrapping the city in noise and neon lights. Cars rushed past the mansion gates, unaware of the quiet battle happening inside. Amara lay awake on her small bed, staring at the ceiling. Sleep refused to come, no matter how tired her body felt. The credit card was locked away, yet its presence filled the room. It whispered possibilities she had never allowed herself to imagine. She turned to her side, tears slipping silently onto the pillow. Not because she wanted the money, but because life had been unfair for so long. Her phone buzzed softly. It was her mother calling from the village. "Amara," her mother's voice trembled. "Your brother Chinedu is sick. The hospital wants money before treatment." Amara's heart dropped to her stomach. The amount mentioned was more than her monthly salary. She squeezed her eyes shut as tears poured freely. Of all nights, of all moments. After the call ended, she sat in silence. The city outside continued celebrating, uncaring. Amara opened the drawer slowly. The black card stared back at her, cold and powerful. Her hands shook violently as she held it. No one would know. Temptation whispered cruelly. She imagined her brother smiling again. She imagined relief washing over her mother's face. But she also imagined her father's disappointed eyes. She imagined her own reflection, broken and ashamed. She fell to her knees, sobbing. "God, help me," she cried softly. After a long moment, Amara made a decision. She wrapped the card in cloth and locked it away again. Then she picked up her phone and sent her mother her entire savings. It was not enough, but it was honest. She lay back down, drained and empty. Yet somewhere deep inside, peace flickered faintly. Upstairs, Chief Ajayi watched everything unfold on the security feed. His hands trembled for the first time in years. He had tested many women before. None had passed this moment. Some bought cars. Some disappeared completely. But this maid, this quiet woman, chose integrity over desperation. And that choice shook his soul. Chief Ajayi sat down heavily. The test had crossed into something else. Respect. And perhaps love. Morning arrived gently, like it was afraid to disturb the night's pain. Soft rain fell over Lagos, washing the streets but failing to cleanse heavy hearts. Amara woke before her alarm, her body exhausted but her mind wide awake. Her eyes burned from tears she had cried in silence. She sat on the edge of her bed for a long time, staring at the wall. Last night had aged her in ways sleep could not repair. Still, she rose, bathed, and wore her uniform with care. Dignity, she believed, was something no one should steal from themselves. Downstairs, the mansion felt unusually quiet. Even the walls seemed to listen. Amara cleaned slowly, her hands steady despite the storm inside her chest. Every step reminded her that truth always finds its way back home. When the sound of tires crunching against gravel echoed outside, her heart skipped painfully. Chief Adebayo Ajayi had returned. Earlier than expected, fear rushed through her. Not fear of guilt, but fear of misunderstanding. In Lagos, explanations often came too late. She stepped forward immediately when she saw him enter. He looked tired, different, softer somehow. "Good afternoon, sir," she greeted, bowing slightly. Her voice carried respect, but also quiet bravery. Chief Ajayi nodded, his eyes never leaving her face. "Amara," he said, his tone unreadable. "Where is the card?" Without a word, she turned and walked upstairs. Each step felt like walking toward judgment. She opened her drawer slowly and removed the cloth-wrapped card. Her fingers trembled, not from temptation now, but from relief. Returning to the living room, she placed it gently on the table, as if placing something sacred down. "Everything you asked me to buy is in the kitchen," she said. Her voice was calm, though her heart raced wildly. She stepped back and lowered her head. No defense, no drama, no story. Chief Ajayi picked up the card slowly. He examined it like it might suddenly confess something. It was untouched, clean, innocent. You know, he said quietly, many women would have disappeared with this. Amara swallowed hard. I know, sir, she replied softly. He looked at her sharply. Why didn't you? The question hung heavy in the air. This was the real test now. Amara lifted her head slightly. Her eyes glistened, but she did not cry. I was tempted, she admitted honestly. There are problems in my family that money could solve. Chief Ajayi's breath caught. This was not the answer he expected. But my father taught me something before he died, she continued. That when you sell your character, you become poor forever. Her voice broke then, just a little. And sir, I am already poor enough. Silence fell like a heavy curtain. Chief Ajayi turned away abruptly. He walked toward the window, clenching his fists. His chest tightened with emotions he had buried for years. This was not loyalty driven by fear. This was integrity born from pain. I tested you, he said slowly, without turning around. And you passed. Amara's eyes widened slightly. But she said nothing. You may go, he added quietly. I need to be alone. She bowed her head respectfully and walked away. Her legs felt weak, but her spirit felt strangely light. As the door closed behind her, Chief Adebayo Ajayi finally broke. Tears slid down the face of a billionaire who had just realized money had never been his greatest power. He sat down heavily, staring at the card in his hand. All his life, it had exposed greed. Today, it revealed purity, and it came from the person he least expected. In that moment, something shifted forever. The test had ended, but love had just begun. Days passed, but Amara felt the change immediately. Chief Ajayi no longer spoke to her as just staff. There was respect now, and caution. He watched her from a distance, as if afraid to disturb something delicate. Amara noticed, but she pretended not to. She returned to her routine, believing the test was over. She did not know she had become a standard. Chief Ajayi, however, was not satisfied yet. Years of betrayal had made him careful, almost cruel to himself. One passing test was not enough to silence his doubts. He needed certainty, even if it hurt. So he decided to repeat the experiment. This time, with women who openly wanted him. The first was Saad Williams, a popular socialite in Victoria Island. Beautiful, bold, and dangerously confident. She laughed loudly and spoke of love within minutes of meeting him. Her eyes never stopped scanning the luxury around her. During their second meeting, Chief Ajayi placed the black card on the table. Use this to get whatever you need, he said casually. Her smile widened instantly. Before the day ended, the card had tasted gold, shoes, and champagne. By morning, she had blocked his number. The card returned empty, both money and meaning gone. Next came Nkiru Okafor, a businesswoman who claimed independence. She spoke about loyalty, faith, and partnership. Chief Ajayi wanted to believe her, so he handed her the same card. Within hours, she transferred large sums into private accounts. She called it investment for our future. When confronted, she laughed. You can afford it, she said without shame. That laughter echoed painfully in his memory. Then came Zainab Bello, gentle in speech and soft in appearance. She spoke of patience and destiny. For a moment, Chief Ajayi felt hope again. But temptation has a way of changing faces. She used the card to settle her ex-lover's debts. When asked why, she said, love means sacrifice. But sacrifice without permission is theft wearing perfume. Each failure reopened old wounds. Each test confirmed a painful truth. The women did not love him. They loved access. They loved comfort, not character. And through it all, one image stayed constant in his mind. Amara, locking the card away with trembling hands. One night, he stood alone in his study. The city lights reflected off the glass like broken stars. He whispered her name softly, as if saying it too loudly might break the spell. For the first time in years, Chief Adebayo Ajayi felt fear, not of loss, but of hope. Because falling for someone like Amara meant risking everything he had built to protect his heart. Amara thought she had survived the hardest parts of her life already. She believed hunger, loss, and silence were the sharpest weapons fate carried. But Lagos had a way of reopening old wounds at the worst moments. Just when hope began to feel possible, the past returned uninvited. That morning, as she scrubbed the kitchen floor, Her phone vibrated softly. The name on the screen froze her blood, Ifani. Ifani was a chapter she tried not to remember. He was the man she once loved before Lagos taught her caution. Years ago, he promised marriage and protection. Instead, he left her when money became scarce. He moved to the city ahead of her, chasing success. When Amara arrived later, she found him with someone richer, someone useful. Now, after years of silence, he was calling again. And in Lagos, nothing resurfaces without a reason. She ignored the call and returned to work. But her hands shook, and the floor grew blurry through tears she refused to shed. That evening, she met him by accident near the estate gate. He stood there confidently, dressed better than she remembered. "Amara," he said softly, smiling like the past had not hurt her. "I heard you work here." Her chest tightened painfully. "Yes," she replied, her voice firm but wounded. Ifani spoke of regrets and second chances. He spoke of love rediscovered and destiny delayed. Then his eyes drifted toward the mansion behind her. Curiosity flickered, then calculation. "So, your boss must be generous," he said casually. That was when Amara understood everything. Pain washed over her like cold rain. Even ghosts came back for money in Lagos. She walked away without another word. Tears streamed freely now, unashamed. Inside the mansion, Chief Ajayi noticed her swollen eyes. Something inside him tightened immediately. "Amara," he said gently, "who hurt you?" Her silence answered louder than words. That night, Amara cried herself to sleep. Not because of Ifani, but because life kept testing her strength. And somewhere upstairs, a billionaire sat awake, realizing that loving her meant protecting her. For the first time, he did not want to test love anymore. He wanted to fight for it. The mansion was quiet that night, yet every room seemed alive with tension. Outside, the city hummed relentlessly, its noise seeping through the walls like a reminder that life waited for no one. Chief Adebayo Ajayi sat in his study, staring at the black card on the desk. It had already shown him the truth about countless women, greed, selfishness, entitlement. But Amara, she was different. Different in a way that unsettled him. Different in a way that made him feel vulnerable for the first time in years. He thought about the night she had resisted temptation. How her hands had trembled as she held the card. How her eyes had reflected honesty, even when life had begged her to be dishonest. That moment had pierced him deeper than all the betrayals before. It was not just loyalty. It was courage, humility, and grace all wrapped into one quiet soul. And now, after watching her struggle with the memory of Ifani, he felt something he had not felt in a very long time. Responsibility and desire. He left the study quietly, his expensive shoes barely making a sound on the marble floors. The security guards barely glanced up. They were used to his nocturnal wandering. He found Amara in the kitchen, sitting on a chair with her knees pulled to her chest. She had not heard him approach, her mind trapped in memories and tears. "Amara," he said softly, careful not to startle her. She looked up quickly, fear and respect dancing in her eyes. "Sir," she murmured, unsure how to respond to this unexpected intimacy. He knelt before her, not in wealth, but in vulnerability. This was not a billionaire asserting control. This was a man revealing his heart. "I have watched you," he said quietly, "more closely than anyone should watch a maid. And yet, you are the only one who has ever made me feel hope again." Amara blinked, tears forming anew. I don't understand, sir," she whispered. "You do not need to understand," he replied gently. "I only need to tell you the truth. I cannot give my heart lightly. I have tested it too many times. But you have passed every test, not because I watched, but because your heart is true." Amara's hands shook as she tried to rise, but he gently stopped her. "Sit," he said. "Please, just listen." For the first time in her life, she did not hide behind humility or fear. She sat, letting herself feel the truth of the moment. Chief Ajayi continued, "I have tested many women before you. Some smiled at me, some smiled at my wealth. Some even stole from me openly. You never once wavered." He leaned closer, his eyes locking with hers. "And now, I cannot pretend I am indifferent. Amara, I want to know if you could ever consider me, not as a boss, but as a man." Amara felt her chest tighten. It was as if all the struggles, all the tests, and all the sacrifices had led to this single point. Outside, the rain had stopped, leaving Lagos glistening under streetlights. Inside the mansion, Two hearts hesitated at the edge of a possibility they had both longed for, one heart wary of betrayal, the other wary of its own worth. She finally spoke, her voice trembling, soft but steady. Sir, I, I do not know what to say, but my heart, it has always been careful with what it gives. And I think, I have never been more honest in my life than I am with you now. He reached out and held her hand gently. Warmth passed between them, a promise more powerful than gold. For the first time in years, Chief Ajayi smiled without calculation. Not as a billionaire testing loyalty, not as a man guarding his heart, but as a man ready to love and be loved in return. And for Amara, tears fell freely, not from sorrow, but from relief and joy. For the first time, she felt seen, respected, and valued, not for money, not for convenience, but for herself. In the heart of Lagos, the city of temptation, greed, and restless ambition, two souls had found honesty, courage, and the fragile beginnings of love. The streets of Lagos never slept, and neither did its whispers. News traveled faster than cars could drive, and secrets rarely stayed hidden. By the second week after the card test, rumors had begun to swirl. Workers in Lekki, Victoria Island, and even in the bustling markets of Oshodi were talking. Adebayo Ajayi and his maid? Can a maid really hold his heart? Is this love? Or just another game? Even the newspapers hinted, though subtly, at a billionaire's curious fascination with his staff. It was the kind of story Lagos feasted on: wealth, romance, and scandal. Inside the mansion, Amara felt the tension before she understood it. Delivery men lingered longer than necessary. Colleagues whispered when she passed. For the first time, she felt the weight of attention she had never asked for. She wondered if honesty and loyalty could survive a city that thrived on judgment. One afternoon, as she washed the floors of the grand living room, she overheard two socialites outside the estate gate. They say Ajayi is in love with her, one said, barely hiding laughter. A maid. Can you imagine? In Lagos, Amara's hands froze. The laughter stung, not because it was cruel, but because it reflected the city she lived in, always skeptical of what it could not buy. Chief Ajayi noticed her unease immediately. He had been preparing her for tests of character, but he had not prepared her for the gaze of a city that judged freely. He approached quietly, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Do not listen," he said firmly, his voice low but unshakable. Amara looked up, meeting his eyes. "I can't help it, sir," she whispered. "They're everywhere, and I feel like I'm under a microscope." Chief Ajayi smiled faintly, though his heart ached at her vulnerability. "Lagos watches Amara, but their eyes cannot touch the truth we have found. Not if we hold it close enough." But the city, as it always did not relent. Saad, and Karu, and Zainab, the women who had failed his tests, heard of Amara's integrity. Each approached the gates, dressed in ambition and resentment. They whispered to security, trying to catch a glimpse. They posted rumors on social media, tagging the mansion's staff. They laughed, mocked, and plotted. Chief Ajayi noticed the activity and felt anger rise, not just for himself, but for Amara. He realized that love, no matter how pure, could be assailed by envy, greed, and rumor. One evening, while Amara prepared dinner quietly, she noticed a car slowly circling the mansion. She felt a cold prick in her chest. It was not fear of money or theft, but of exposure. Before she could panic, Chief Ajayi appeared behind her. He held her hand and smiled reassuringly. "You are not alone, Amara. Let the city whisper. We know what is real, and that is enough." She leaned into him slightly, letting herself feel protection for the first time. The mansion felt less like walls and more like sanctuary. Outside, Lagos continued its restless pulse. The streets had eyes, the gossip had teeth, and the city had no mercy for love built on integrity. Yet inside the mansion, a billionaire and a maid held hands across distance, learning for the first time that truth and loyalty could outshine even the loudest of whispers. And as night fell, the rain returned softly, washing the city with a quiet reminder. Even in chaos, purity and love can survive, if only they are brave enough to stand together. The sun rose over Lagos like it was trying to soothe a city that never truly rested. But inside the Ajayi mansion, calm was fragile. Amara's phone buzzed repeatedly on the small kitchen counter. Each vibration made her heart jump, an echo of a past she could not fully leave behind. She wiped her hands on her uniform and stared at the screen. It was her mother again. Amara. Chinidu is worse today. The voice trembled. I don't know what to do. The hospital says he needs immediate surgery. Amara's chest tightened painfully. The money she had sent before barely covered the first tests. The family she had fought so hard to support needed far more than she could afford. She closed her eyes and whispered a prayer. Her loyalty and honesty had won her a place in the mansion, but her heart belonged to another battlefield, the one her family fought daily. The thought of asking Chief Ajayi for help made her uneasy. She had already seen how money could corrupt hearts. She could not bear to be judged as another opportunist. Yet, as she sat on the kitchen stool, tears running silently down her cheeks, she realized she had no choice. Later that morning, she went to Chief Ajayi's study. The black card had already become a symbol between them: trust, loyalty, honesty. But now, it also symbolized temptation once again. Sir, she began softly, bowing her head. My family, they need urgent help. My brother is very ill, and I don't have enough. Chief Ajayi looked at her, his expression unreadable. He studied her eyes, the same eyes that had refused temptation before. He saw no greed. He saw responsibility. He saw love. Amara, he said slowly, I have watched you more closely than I ever thought I would watch anyone. And I know your heart. You do not seek money for yourself. You seek it for others. She blinked, unsure what to say. Her humility made her pause, but the urgency in her chest did not allow silence to linger. He stood up, towering but gentle. Take this, he said, handing her a blank check and his personal card. Pay for everything your family needs, and more if necessary. Do not worry about repayment. Amara's hands shook violently. She wanted to refuse, but the tears running down her face made her truth undeniable. Sir, I cannot accept this, she whispered. It's not right. I've already taken so much. Chief Ajayi walked closer, resting a reassuring hand on her shoulder. Amara, what is right is doing good without fear. You have proved honesty and loyalty once before. You will do so again. This is not about taking. It's about protecting what matters. She accepted the help, barely believing her luck. Later, she called her mother, her voice trembling but full of hope. By the afternoon, Chinidu's surgery was covered, and her family finally breathed easier. That evening, she returned to the mansion quietly, exhausted, her mind full of gratitude. Chief Ajayi met her at the door, his gaze soft but searching. You have nothing to fear with me, Amara, he said gently. Not judgment, not ridicule, not gossip, not money. She looked at him, tears streaming freely now. This city, it never stops testing me, she whispered. Chief Ajayi smiled faintly, sadness and pride mingling in his eyes. I know, but maybe, just maybe it has found something it cannot touch. Us. Outside, Lagos continued its relentless rhythm. Horns, vendors, neon lights. But inside the mansion, two hearts had begun to build a fortress far stronger than walls or money. Amara realized that true wealth was not Naira, and Chief Ajayi realized that true love was not found in control, but in trust. For the first time, both felt what it meant to be untouchable, not because the city allowed it, but because they had chosen honesty, loyalty, and courage above all else. And in the quiet of that mansion, amid the sounds of a city that never slept, love began its slow, unstoppable rise. The city of Lagos buzzed with life, each street alive with the rhythm of ambition, gossip, and desire. Every car horn, every market call, every laughter that rang in Victoria Island carried a story, sometimes true, sometimes twisted. Inside the Ajayi mansion, the air was heavy with quiet tension. Amara moved through the grand halls as she always did, her hands steady, her eyes wary, but her heart increasingly burdened by invisible eyes she could not see. She sensed the gossip even before it reached the front gate. And outside, the city that had tested her every step now watched the mansion like a hawk circling its prey. It began subtly. A delivery man lingered when he should have gone. A taxi driver smirked knowingly when dropping someone at the gates. Even the maids from nearby estates started pointing, whispering, and laughing quietly. Amara felt the weight of it all. Though she had passed Chief Ajayi's test of honesty, the city had its own cruel tests. And this one was not about money. It was about judgment, envy, and the cruelty of idle minds. One afternoon, while cleaning the library, she overheard two socialites outside the gate. "They say Ajayi is seeing his maid," one said with a shrill laugh. "She must be after his money." The words stabbed her like knives, but she kept her composure. She could feel the tension in her chest, the shame the city wanted her to feel, but she refused to give it power. Upstairs, Chief Ajayi watched her quietly. He had long stopped seeing her as just a maid. To him, she was the only woman in Lagos whose loyalty and heart could not be bought. Yet he understood the storm she now faced. The city could be cruel, but he would not allow its whispers to reach her spirit. He left his study and walked toward her, not with wealth or authority, but with presence, calm and deliberate. "Amara," he said softly, placing a hand gently on her shoulder. She flinched, not from fear, but from the intensity of his gaze. "Do not listen to them," he said quietly. "The city can whisper, laugh, and judge, but their opinions cannot touch what we know is true." Her chest tightened. I try, sir," she admitted. "But it feels like everywhere I go, people are waiting for me to fail." He knelt before her, as he had once done in the quiet of the kitchen. "This city will always test the brave," he said, his voice low but steady. "And you, Amara, have proven braver than anyone I have ever known." Tears welled in her eyes, but she held them back. Not because she did not feel, but because she had learned strength under fire. "I want them to see you," he said finally, standing tall. "Not as a maid, not as a servant, but as the woman who owns her integrity and courage. And if they cannot respect that, then they have no place in our world." Amara looked at him, awe and gratitude mingling in her gaze. For the first time, she realized that he was not only protecting her from the city, he was preparing her to walk proudly through it. That evening, Chief Ajayi invited her to join him in the study. The black card that had once been a symbol of temptation and loyalty now lay untouched on the desk. It was no longer the test, it was history. He poured 2 glasses of wine, a rare indulgence for the household. "Tonight," he said softly, "we stop hiding. We stop fearing whispers. We start being honest with ourselves and with Lagos." Amara sat, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. I don't know if I am ready, sir," she admitted. "But I know I trust you, and I feel safe with you." His eyes softened. "Trust is the first step toward everything else. And I promise, Amara, nothing in this city will ever harm you if I am standing beside you." Outside, the streets continued to buzz, oblivious to the quiet revolution occurring within the mansion. Inside, 2 hearts began to forge a bond stronger than gossip, envy, or the relentless scrutiny of Lagos. The city could test them, the world could doubt them, and even the past could return to haunt them. But together, they had begun to build something no wealth, no rumor, and no malice could ever touch. And in the flickering candlelight, as rain softly tapped the windows again, Chief Ajayi and Amara allowed themselves a rare moment of peace, the first of many in a world that had never been kind, but could finally be theirs. The city of Lagos never rested. Its pulse was relentless, a rhythm of ambition, desire, and endless whispers. Word of Chief Ajayi and Amara had already traveled faster than any car could drive. Rumors flew from Victoria Island to Lekki, from Oshodi markets to Ikoyi cafes. "Is the billionaire really in love with his maid?" people asked, some amused, some skeptical, some enraged. Outside the mansion gates, drivers, delivery men, and curious neighbors began to linger. Some watched, some whispered, and some laughed cruelly. The city was testing Amara again, but this time, it was not about money. It was about her heart, her courage, and her place in a world that judged too quickly. Inside the mansion, Amara felt the tension like a weight pressing on her chest. She moved through the halls quietly, her hands steady, but her eyes flicked nervously toward every shadow. Every glance from a stranger outside the gate felt like a test she could not prepare for. Chief Ajayi noticed her unease immediately. He had long stopped seeing her as just a maid. To him, she was the only woman whose loyalty and heart could not be bought or swayed. Yet, he understood that love alone could not protect her. The city itself, with its sharp eyes and sharper tongues, would attack her integrity if left unchecked. That evening, as the mansion lit itself with the soft glow of chandeliers, Chief Ajayi called Amara into his study. He closed the door, shutting out the murmurs of Lagos for a brief moment. "Amara," he said softly, taking her hand in his. You are stronger than this city realizes. But strength alone will not silence whispers. I will stand with you, publicly and loudly. From now on, anyone who dares question you will see me as the shield you deserve. Amara looked at him, stunned. She had spent her life hiding, bowing, avoiding attention. And now, the richest man in Lagos was declaring her untouchable. The next morning, Chief Ajayi arranged a small gathering at the mansion. Not for show, not for the media, not for gossip, but to make a statement for anyone who would judge silently. He invited close friends, business associates, and a few trusted neighbors. Amara stood quietly beside him, her hands clasped, heart racing. When he spoke, his voice carried across the marble halls, strong, deliberate, and unshakable. This woman, he said, gesturing toward Amara, has proven loyalty, courage, and honesty. In a city that thrives on pretense and greed, she stands as the truest heart I have ever known. And for that reason, she is more than my employee. She is my partner, my equal, and someone I am proud to call by my side. Gasps and murmurs rippled through the crowd. Some smiled in admiration, some frowned in envy, and some whispered behind cupped hands. Amara felt her chest tighten, a mixture of fear and pride washing over her. Never had she imagined such protection, such recognition. And yet, standing there, hand in hand with Chief Ajayi, she finally felt seen. Outside, Lagos continued its relentless hum. But inside the mansion, two hearts stood firm against judgment, envy, and scrutiny. For the first time, Amara allowed herself to hope. And Chief Ajayi allowed himself to feel love, not distant, cautious, or measured, but alive and unrestrained. By nightfall, the city would whisper, yes. But the mansion held a truth stronger than rumor, louder than envy, and unshakable against judgment. Together, they had begun to rewrite the rules. The billionaire and his maid. The city and its tests. Love proving stronger than wealth, stronger than gossip, and stronger than fear. The morning in Lagos was harsh, loud, and restless. Even the sky seemed impatient, gray clouds rumbling like the city's conscience. Outside the Ajayi mansion, whispers had grown into murmurs, and murmurs into gossip. Saad Williams, Nkiru Okafor, and Zainab Bello had learned of Chief Ajayi's public declaration. The women who had failed his tests before now plotted silently, driven by jealousy, wounded pride, and greed. They cannot be serious, Saad hissed into her phone, pacing the polished floor of her apartment in Victoria Island. A maid? Really? Who does he think she is? Nkiru chuckled darkly from the other end. It's time Lagos reminded him, and her, that a maid does not belong in his world. We will see how long she lasts before the city's eyes crush her courage. Meanwhile, Amara tried to carry on her work, though each glance at the gate reminded her that the city's gaze never slept. She cleaned, polished, and served with her usual diligence, but a tension gripped her chest. It was not fear of Chief Ajayi. It was fear of judgment, whispers, and envy that could turn the world against her. She paused in the hallway, feeling the weight of Lagos pressing through the iron gates. Her hands trembled slightly, not from weakness, but from awareness that love and loyalty could draw as much danger as money ever could. Chief Ajayi noticed her unease instantly. He had never seen fear in her eyes before, only strength, humility, and courage. Now, though, the shadows of the city threatened her. He approached quietly, placing a firm, reassuring hand on her shoulder. Amara, he said softly, his voice steady. Do you feel them? Ah, yes, sir, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. They are everywhere, watching, judging. I feel like the city is ready to punish me for standing beside you. Chief Ajayi's eyes softened, filled with something fierce and protective. Let them watch. Let them whisper. They cannot touch you, not if I am here. You have passed every test of heart, honesty, and courage. Now you will not face this alone. That afternoon, the first confrontation came. Saad arrived at the gates in a sleek black car, her heels clicking sharply against the driveway. She smiled, cold and practiced, and demanded to see Amara. Chief Ajayi stepped outside, tall and imposing. Do you have business here? He asked calmly, but with a tone that made it clear he controlled everything around him. Saad smirked. I just wanted to meet her. The woman who thinks she can hold your attention. Amara froze, unsure whether to retreat or respond. But Chief Ajayi stepped forward, placing himself subtly between them. She is under my protection, he said quietly, but every word carried authority. She is loyal, honest, and true. If you cannot accept that, then you have no business here. Saad faltered for a moment, taken aback by his firmness. Nkiru and Zainab watched from the street, fury blazing in their eyes. But the billionaire's stance, calm and unyielding, made clear that no whisper, no jealousy, and no envy could threaten the truth. Amara exhaled quietly, relief flooding her chest. For the first time, she realized that love and protection could exist, not just as words, but as actions. And Chief Ajayi, watching her expression soften, felt a surge in his chest. He realized that protecting her was no longer just a duty. It was a privilege, and his heart could no longer hide what it had been feeling for weeks. As the car doors closed and the women left, Lagos continued its relentless hum. The city tested, the city whispered, the city judged. But inside the mansion, two hearts had begun to claim their own world. One built on honesty, loyalty, courage, and the slow, undeniable bloom of love. Chief Ajayi took Amara's hand gently. "Do you see?" he asked softly. "They can whisper, they can plot, they can envy, but they cannot touch what is true. And this is ours." Amara's eyes glistened with tears, but for the first time, they were tears of strength and hope, not fear. She realized that the city could roar, but love could roar back, louder, stronger, and unbreakable. Night had fallen over Lagos, and the city seemed to exhale after a long day. The neon lights flickered in the distance, street vendors' calls faded into the hum of traffic, and the rain-soaked streets reflected 1,000 small stars that were not there. Inside the Ajayi mansion, the world felt different. Here, the chaos of Lagos, the gossip, the jealousy, the greed, had no power. Here, the air smelled of polished wood and jasmine, carrying the faint warmth of candles lit in quiet corners. Amara moved through the grand hallway, carrying a tray of tea, each step careful and measured. She felt the tension in her shoulders soften ever so slightly. This mansion, with all its wealth and walls, had begun to feel like home, not just a place of work, but a sanctuary for her heart. Chief Ajayi appeared in the doorway of the lounge, his silhouette tall and commanding. Yet tonight, there was softness in his eyes that the city never saw. He smiled faintly at her, the kind of smile that made every whispered rumor outside the gates feel irrelevant. "Tea?" he asked gently, nodding toward the tray. Amara offered it to him, their fingers brushing for a moment. A small spark of warmth traveled between them, but neither spoke, as if words were too fragile for what simmered beneath the surface. She sat across from him, and the silence stretched, comfortable yet charged. It was as if the mansion itself held its breath, knowing that the moment was sacred, private, and delicate. After a pause, Chief Ajayi spoke quietly. "Amara, I've watched you for weeks now. I've seen your courage, your honesty, your loyalty, and now I see something more. I see the woman I want beside me, not just in my mansion, not just in my life, but in every part of it." Amara's eyes widened slightly, heart racing. Her hands trembled as she set down the tray. She had been careful her whole life, careful with words, with trust, with hearts. Yet now, before her, stood a man who made it safe to feel. I don't know what to say, sir," she whispered, voice small but steady. I don't know how to belong here, or with someone like you." He leaned forward slightly, his gaze never leaving hers. "Amara, belonging is not about wealth or status or the city's judgment. It's about trust. It's about truth. And you, every single day, have proven that you are the truest person I've ever met." Tears welled in her eyes. Not tears of fear, not tears of sorrow, tears of relief, hope, and the quiet recognition that her heart had finally found safety. She whispered, I think I've waited my whole life for someone to see me this way. Not as a maid, not as a poor girl, but as me." For the first time, Chief Ajayi closed the distance between them. He did not rush, he did not force. He simply reached for her hand, holding it with care, warmth, and respect. "Then we will take this one step at a time," he said gently. "The city can whisper, the world can judge. But here, in this house, with honesty and courage, we are free." Amara smiled through tears, finally allowing herself to breathe. For the first time, she felt the truth of love unburdened by fear, envy, or greed. And Chief Ajayi, watching her expression soften, realized that this was more than admiration, more than desire. It was love, deep and undeniable. Outside, Lagos continued its relentless hum. Yet inside the mansion, the rain tapped softly against the windows, the lamps glowed, and two hearts began to intertwine in a way the city could never touch. Amara realized that no gossip, no envy, no obstacle could undo this bond. And Chief Ajayi understood that protecting her was no longer just a duty. It was a privilege, and soon, it would become the most beautiful part of his life. For the first time, the mansion was not just a home. It was a sanctuary, a place where love, loyalty, and truth could finally breathe. The sun rose over Lagos, sharp and relentless, a city that never forgave weakness. Its streets swarmed with ambition, gossip, and envy, moving faster than the wind itself. Inside the Ajayi mansion, there was no sound of the city, only a fragile peace. Amara moved quietly through the grand halls, preparing breakfast for the household. Every step she took carried the weight of unseen eyes and whispered judgments, and she could feel the tension pressing in from outside the walls. The peace she had felt with Chief Ajayi was being tested, not by wealth, not by temptation, but by the envy of those who had failed before. By mid-morning, Saad Williams had returned, this time with a group of women who had long sought to undermine Amara. They arrived at the gates, dressed in designer clothes, heels clicking sharply on the driveway. Their eyes were sharp, their smiles false, and their whispers were carefully calculated to sting. "I heard he's so taken with her, a Maid," Saad said loudly, as if the walls themselves should hear her disdain. "She doesn't belong in his world. How long do you think this will last?" Amara froze momentarily, feeling the familiar sting of judgment, the city's whispers pressing down like invisible hands. Yet she remembered Chief Ajayi's words. The city could whisper, the city could judge, but truth and courage were untouchable. Chief Ajayi appeared in the doorway, his presence commanding and calm. The women faltered, their confident smiles wavered as they saw him. He stood tall, his hands folded behind his back, his eyes locked on them with quiet authority. "This woman," he said, nodding toward Amara, "has earned my trust, my respect, and my heart. She does not need your approval, nor does she need your judgment." Saad and her friends exchanged glances, surprise and irritation flashing across their faces. They had come to test her, to unsettle her, but Chief Ajayi's words, firm and unwavering, left them speechless. Amara took a deep breath, standing taller, shoulders back. For the first time, she realized that strength did not come from avoiding judgment, but from facing it with courage and integrity. Her hands, which had trembled in private, now rested confidently in front of her, visible to the women who had come to shame her. "I do not seek your approval," she said quietly, her voice steady and calm. "What I have earned is not from wealth or status, but from honesty and hard work. And if that is not enough for you, then your judgment means nothing to me." The mansion seemed to hold its breath. Even the city outside paused for a moment, as if acknowledging the defiance and dignity radiating from Amara. Chief Ajayi stepped closer to her, subtly shielding her with his presence. "Do you see?" he said quietly, just for her. "No whisper, no envy, no plotting can harm you if we stand together." Amara's eyes glistened, tears threatening, but this time they were tears of triumph, not fear. She realized the city could roar, the rivals could plot, and Lagos itself could conspire, but love, loyalty, and courage were shields stronger than gold, more enduring than gossip, and untouchable by envy. Hand in hand, they stood together in the grand hall, a fortress of integrity and heart amid the chaos of Lagos. And in that moment, it was clear, the mansion was no longer just a home. It was a sanctuary, and their bond, tested by temptation, by jealousy, and by the city itself, had emerged unbroken, stronger, and undeniable. Night fell over Lagos like a velvet curtain, softening the city's harsh edges. The hum of traffic, the calls of street vendors, and the distant laughter from Victoria Island all blended into a muted symphony outside the mansion walls. Inside, however, there was quiet, a fragile, sacred quiet that felt like a secret the city was not allowed to touch. Amara moved through the dimly lit hallways, carrying a small tray of dessert she had prepared herself. The aroma of fresh pastries and tea mingled with the scent of polished wood and candlelight. Her heart was still cautious. She had lived most of her life under the weight of judgment and poverty, but tonight, it felt lighter, freer. Chief Ajayi appeared from the study, his tall silhouette framed by the warm light of the chandelier. He smiled softly at her, a smile that carried both admiration and a tenderness he rarely showed the world. "Amara," he said gently, his deep voice echoing slightly in the grand room. "You don't need to be nervous. There is no city here, no gossip, no envy, only us." Amara blushed, her hands trembling slightly as she placed the tray on the low table. For the first time, she did not hide from her feelings. For the first time, she allowed herself to imagine a life where love was possible, where she could be seen for who she truly was. He motioned for her to sit beside him. The velvet couch felt enormous beneath them, but somehow intimate in its silence. They sat close, yet neither rushed. Every glance, every subtle touch was deliberate, sacred, and full of unspoken words. "You know," Chief Ajayi said softly, breaking the comfortable silence, "I have spent my life testing hearts, measuring loyalty, and guarding against betrayal. But with you, I don't need tests. I only need truth, and you have given me nothing but that." Amara felt warmth bloom in her chest, a mix of relief, love, and awe. I, I never expected this," she admitted quietly. "I thought that with someone like you, the world would always feel dangerous, unkind. And yet, here, with you, it feels safe." He reached out and gently brushed a stray hair from her face. "Safety is something we create together," he said, his eyes locking with hers. "In Lagos, the city will whisper. The world will judge. But here, with honesty, trust, and love, we are untouchable." Her hands found his, and their fingers intertwined naturally, as if they had always belonged together. Amara realized that wealth, status, and city gossip meant nothing in comparison to this connection. For the first time, she felt a love that was powerful yet gentle, bold yet safe, rare yet real. Outside, Lagos continued its relentless rhythm, the neon lights, the honking cars, the endless chatter. But inside the mansion, the city felt distant, powerless. The walls held them in a world of their own making, a world where loyalty, honesty, and courage were rewarded, and where love could grow slowly, steadily, and without fear. Amara rested her head lightly against Chief Ajayi's shoulder. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to feel complete. And Chief Ajayi, feeling her warmth, realized that protecting her was no longer a duty. It was the most natural, inevitable, and joyful part of his life. In that quiet, candlelit sanctuary, love bloomed silently yet fiercely, a force that would withstand the city, envy, and the shadows of their past. The morning sun poured over Lagos, harsh and relentless, lighting the city's every secret. The streets buzzed with gossip faster than traffic could move. Whispers of Chief Ajayi's attachment to Amara had spread like wildfire, reaching every cafe, office, and market corner in the city. Inside the Ajayi mansion, an uneasy tension hung in the air. Servants whispered softly, cautious not to be overheard. Neighbors peered over gates with curiosity, eyes bright with judgment and envy. Even some of Chief Ajayi's business associates had begun to murmur, skeptical of the billionaire's choices. Amara moved through the halls quietly, carrying herself with the dignity she had always clung to. Yet the eyes of the city weighed heavily on her, and the mansion no longer felt as private or safe as it once had. By midday, the first confrontation arrived, an unexpected visit from socialites, journalists, and even a few of Lagos' most notorious gossip bloggers. Saad Williams, Nkiru Okafor, and Zainab Bello were there, determined to challenge Amara's presence. They arrived in sleek cars, their laughter sharp, eyes filled with mockery and calculated malice. "Is this really her?" one whispered as they paused at the gate, barely concealing disbelief. A maid standing beside the richest man in Lagos. Amara froze for a brief moment, heart pounding, but Chief Ajayi stepped forward, his tall figure commanding silence immediately. He spoke calmly, every word deliberate and unwavering. "This woman is more than a title, more than gossip, more than the shallow judgment of strangers. She has proven loyalty, honesty, and courage every single day, and nothing you whisper, plot, or publish can change that." The socialites exchanged uneasy glances, their arrogance faltering in the face of his authority. They tried to mask it, but even they sensed the strength radiating from both him and Amara. Amara stood taller, her shoulders straightened, her hands no longer trembling. "I do not need anyone's approval," she said quietly, but with a strength that carried across the grand hall. "What I have earned is not from wealth or convenience, but from honesty, work, and courage." Chief Ajayi moved slightly closer to her, subtly shielding her from the lingering eyes and whispered judgments. The crowd outside the gates felt powerless, as if a silent wall of authority and integrity now separated them from the couple. "Do you see?" he asked Amara softly, his voice only for her. "The city may whisper, the world may plot, but our bond, our truth, is untouchable, and I will ensure that nothing shakes it." Amara felt a warmth flood her chest, a mixture of love, relief, and growing admiration for the man who had become her protector, her partner, and now her sanctuary. By evening, Lagos had reacted. News of the confrontation spread, mixed with opinions, envy, and astonishment. Yet inside the mansion, the world outside had no power. The couple shared a quiet dinner, hands brushing, eyes meeting, and for the first time, they allowed themselves to simply be. No judgment, no tests, no fear. The mansion, once a stage for societal scrutiny, had become their fortress. And as the night deepened, rain softly tapping against the windows, Chief Ajayi and Amara held hands across the table. They were no longer a billionaire and a maid under observation. They were two hearts, united and unbreakable. Outside, the city could continue to gossip, plot, and judge. Inside, love had already won. The morning sun glinted off Victoria Island's glass towers. Rumors about Chief Ajayi and Amara had reached social elites, and many were skeptical, but curiosity was irresistible. Chief Ajayi invited Amara to a private charity gala, a place where she would be seen by Lagos elite. Amara's heart raced. She had never been in such a world, never imagined the city's gaze would fall on her with anything other than judgment. As they entered, whispers filled the room. Some stared openly, others exchanged hushed, judgmental tones. Yet Chief Ajayi's hand on her back gave her courage, grounding her. "I know it feels strange," he said softly, "but tonight is about showing them who you are, not who they think you are." Amara took a deep breath and smiled, stepping into the lights with grace and quiet confidence. By the evening's end, even the harshest critics whispered admiration for her poise, humility, and sincerity. For the first time, Lagos saw Amara not as a maid, but as a woman of integrity worthy of the billionaire beside her. The gala's music filled the grand ballroom, soft strings and piano creating a delicate ambience. Chief Ajayi offered his hand, and Amara hesitated for just a moment before accepting. Their dance was slow, deliberate, almost cinematic. Every movement, every glance, felt like a declaration of trust and mutual respect. Guests whispered, cameras clicked, but the world outside ceased to exist for the two of them. For the first time, Amara allowed herself to feel safe in the public eye, and Chief Ajayi's heart swelled seeing her blossom under attention he had never seen her receive before. As the music ended, she rested her head lightly on his shoulder, tears of joy threatening to fall. The city could judge, the gossip could spread, but here, in this moment, love was unbreakable. Despite the gala success, old rivals were still scheming. Saad Williams approached the mansion gates later that night, feigning concern, with gifts meant to tempt Amara. Chief Ajayi intercepted her calmly. "Your concern is noted," he said quietly, eyes sharp, "but Amara's heart is no longer a test, and you will find it is untouchable." Amara, watching from the balcony, felt pride and relief. She realized that love did not mean absence of challenge. It meant courage, honesty, and protection from those who sought to destabilize trust. That night, the mansion was silent, except for the rain tapping gently against the windows. Amara and Chief Ajayi sat in the lounge, close, hands intertwined. "Amara," he whispered, voice low, "I've loved from the first moment you resisted temptation, from the first day I saw your honesty. I don't need tests anymore. I only need you." Amara's eyes glistened. I never imagined someone could see me like this," she admitted. "And now, I feel safe, cherished, and loved." They shared a long, tender embrace, a moment of intimacy neither words nor money could buy. By morning, the city had taken notice of Amara's presence at the gala. Social media buzzed with speculation, envy, and gossip. Even distant relatives began calling, questioning her intentions, doubting her worth. Yet Amara no longer trembled. She walked through her day with quiet confidence, hand in hand with Chief Ajayi, his unwavering presence shielding her from doubt. The city could watch, speculate, and whisper, but her bond with Chief Ajayi had become a fortress. One afternoon, a woman claiming to be from a rival company arrived at the mansion. Her intent was clear. She wanted to unsettle Amara, to plant seeds of insecurity, and test Chief Ajayi's commitment. He met her calmly in the grand hall. "Leave," he said softly, yet every word carried unyielding authority. "This house is not for manipulation or envy." Amara watched, heart swelling. She realized that love was not absence of challenge. It was facing it together, protecting what mattered. That evening, the mansion was quiet. Amara prepared dinner while Chief Ajayi poured wine. They shared soft laughter, small stories, and the kind of gentle intimacy the city could never touch. "I never imagined life could feel like this," Amara said softly. "Safe, loved, respected." Chief Ajayi smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "You have earned this, Amara. Not for being perfect, but for being true." Outside, Lagos hummed its chaotic rhythm. But inside, two hearts beat in unison, calm and unshakable. The next morning, Chief Ajayi made a bold decision. He publicly acknowledged Amara in a business meeting, praising her integrity and courage. The room fell silent, the city's skeptics watching in astonishment. Amara's cheeks flushed, not from fear, but pride. The city could whisper all it wanted. She was no longer hiding. Love, honesty, and courage had transformed her from a maid into a woman of strength and dignity. Chief Ajayi looked at her, eyes filled with admiration and love. "Our life together is not defined by gossip," he said softly. "It is defined by truth, courage, and loyalty. And that is untouchable." The city of Lagos was relentless. Even after Chief Ajayi publicly praised Amara, whispers and envy lingered like shadows. Saad, Nkiru, and Zainab gathered in a high-rise office, plotting their final attempt to shake Amara's place in Ajayi's life. "She's only a maid," Saad spat. "He'll see her flaws eventually. Lagos will remind him of the truth." But Nkira hesitated. "She's not just a maid, she's honest. And no amount of gossip can touch what he feels for her." Their words fell into a tense silence. The city might test them, but Chief Ajayi and Amara had built a fortress that even envy could not breach. The next day, a high-profile charity auction brought Amara into the public eye again. Rivals tried subtle sabotage, whispers, pointed questions, and rumors meant to undermine her credibility. But Chief Ajayi stood firmly beside her, his presence a shield. He praised her honesty and contributions publicly, making the city bear witness to her integrity. Amara's heart swelled with pride and relief. For the first time, she understood that love combined with courage could withstand the harshest storms. That evening, the mansion was bathed in soft candlelight. Amara and Chief Ajayi shared quiet tea in the lounge, the city's chaos muffled by walls and trust. "Do you ever regret it?" Amara asked softly. "The city, the gossip, all of it." Chief Ajayi shook his head gently. "Never. It has shown me your strength. It has shown us what is worth protecting. And I would face the world 1,000 times over, as long as you are by my side." Amara smiled, tears glimmering in her eyes. For the first time, she truly believed she belonged, not to the city, not to wealth, but to love. Weeks passed, and attempts to undermine Amara failed spectacularly. Rivals' plots fizzled. Social media skeptics were silenced by her grace and integrity. Even Lagos elite began to respect her courage and honesty. Chief Ajayi watched her with pride and admiration. He realized the tests he had placed before her were no longer necessary. The city had tried, the rivals had failed, and now only the truth remained. Amara's heart and courage were unwavering. One evening, Chief Ajayi invited Amara to the study. A small box sat on the desk, wrapped elegantly. "This is for you," he said softly. She opened it to find a simple pendant, a gold heart with their initials engraved. "It's a reminder," he said, "that honesty, loyalty, and courage shine brighter than gold, gossip, or envy. And that no matter what Lagos says, We are stronger together. Amara's eyes filled with tears. It's perfect, she whispered, touched by both the gesture and the meaning behind it. The next weekend, Chief Ajayi and Amara walked the streets of Lagos together, quietly enjoying life beyond the mansion. People stared, some whispered, but the couple ignored the city's judgment. They laughed, shared stories, and held hands, simple acts of love in a city that rarely allowed innocence. It was a day of freedom. Amara realized that love, when nurtured by honesty and courage, could thrive even in chaos. Chief Ajayi realized that protecting her meant letting her shine, even under the city's relentless gaze. That night, the mansion was quiet. Amara sat by the window, watching Lagos neon lights shimmer across the wet streets. She reflected on her journey, from poverty, judgment, and skepticism to courage, love, and acceptance. Chief Ajayi joined her silently, wrapping an arm around her shoulder. "You've changed everything," he said softly. "Not for me, but for yourself. And that is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen." Amara leaned against him, feeling safe, cherished, and truly loved. For the first time, she believed she could face the world without fear. Rumors persisted, but public opinion began to shift. Amara's grace, honesty, and courage earned admiration even among the harshest critics. Lagos slowly began to accept her presence beside Chief Ajayi, not as a maid, but as a woman worthy of love, respect, and recognition. Chief Ajayi felt relief and pride. The city had tested them. Rivals had tried to break them, and yet their bond had only grown stronger. One evening, in the quiet sanctuary of the mansion, Chief Ajayi turned to Amara. "Amara," he said softly, his hand holding hers firmly, "I have watched you face the city, the tests, and even yourself with courage and honesty. And I realize now, I cannot imagine a life without you. I love you, not for your strength alone, but for every part of you, seen and unseen." Tears filled her eyes, streaming freely now. "I love you too," she whispered. "Not because of wealth, status, or security, but because you see me, truly see me, and still choose me every day." A week later, Chief Ajayi planned a private dinner in the mansion's rooftop garden. Candles flickered, flowers perfumed the air, and the city lights of Lagos shimmered like stars below. He knelt before Amara, holding a small velvet box. "Amara," he said, voice trembling slightly, "you have passed every test life, and even this city could throw at you. Your loyalty, honesty, courage, and heart have proven that love is real. Will you marry me, and let us face the world together, honestly, bravely, and forever?" Amara gasped, tears spilling freely. "Yes," she cried, throwing her arms around him. In that moment, Lagos' chaos, gossip, and envy faded away, leaving only two hearts beating as one. The city could whisper, judge, or scoff, but love had won, strong, pure, and unshakable. News of Chief Ajayi's proposal spread across Lagos like wildfire. Instead of envy or whispers, admiration and awe began to replace gossip. The mansion prepared a small engagement celebration, inviting only close friends and trusted associates. Amara felt a mix of nerves and excitement. This was her first celebration in a world she had never imagined belonging to. Yet with Chief Ajayi by her side, she felt secure. During the celebration, guests praised her integrity, courage, and grace. Even former skeptics quietly admitted that her honesty and loyalty had won not just the billionaire's heart, but the respect of everyone present. Chief Ajayi held her hand gently, whispering, "See, your heart is stronger than the city itself." Amara smiled, feeling the first true sense of belonging in her life, surrounded by love and acceptance. The next morning, Chief Ajayi and Amara walked through Lagos together, hand in hand. The city buzzed with its usual intensity, but their connection made the chaos fade away. Street vendors, neighbors, and even passerby smiled as they passed. Some whispered, but these whispers were no longer meant to undermine. They were admiration for a couple who had weathered gossip, envy, and temptation, yet emerged unbroken. Amara felt free, her shoulders relaxed for the first time in years. She realized that love combined with courage and honesty could create a world of their own, even in a city that never slept. Chief Ajayi leaned closer, whispering, "Our life together begins now, beyond rumors and judgment. Amara squeezed his hand, knowing that this promise was real and their love unstoppable. Weeks passed, and preparations for the wedding began. Amara chose every detail carefully, not for show, but to reflect honesty, warmth, and their shared values. Chief Ajayi watched her, admiration and love growing each day. "Everything you touch becomes meaningful," he whispered one evening, as they reviewed invitations. "Your heart shapes this, and I am lucky to follow it." Amara smiled, feeling the depth of his respect. For the first time, wealth and status did not feel like barriers. They were tools to build a life grounded in love and integrity. The mansion transformed into a haven of flowers, music, and joy. Family, friends, and loved ones gathered, celebrating a union that had survived gossip, envy, and the relentless city. Amara walked down the aisle, her eyes locked on Chief Ajayi's. Tears streamed down her cheeks, not from sadness, but from the overwhelming relief, joy, and love she had fought so hard to earn. When they exchanged vows, the mansion seemed to hold its breath, witnessing a love born from courage, honesty, and perseverance. Chief Ajayi whispered in her ear, "You are mine, as I am yours, in every truth, every trial, and every triumph." Amara smiled through tears. "Yes," she said, her voice firm and joyful. "Forever, in every way." The newlyweds left the mansion hand in hand, stepping into a world that once tested them relentlessly. Lagos, with all its gossip, envy, and chaos, had no power over them anymore. Chief Ajayi and Amara began their life together, quiet mornings, laughter-filled evenings, and love that grew stronger each day. They traveled, helped others, and built a home where honesty, courage, and integrity reigned. Amara had become more than a maid, more than a whispered rumor. She had become a symbol of strength, loyalty, and unwavering heart. And Chief Ajayi had found more than love. He had found a partner whose honesty and courage had transformed his life forever. Together, they stood above the city's chaos, unshakable, untouchable, and endlessly in love. The billionaire and his maid, tested by temptation, envy, and Lagos itself, had won the greatest prize of all, a life built on love, trust, and happiness. The city would continue to hum, to whisper, and to rush, but inside their sanctuary, love reigned supreme. Please subscribe, share, like, and comment for more videos.